Uganda is a really Christian nation. Almost 90% of the population is Christian and the rest are Muslim. And the Christians are basically divided between Anglicans and Catholics, but recently the evangelicals have been really gaining ground here. Joel Osteen, Joyce Myers, but the bestseller is Rick Warren. His book, The Purpose-Driven Life, is widely popular here. Everybody who's spoken to has read his book, and it's even distributed at some churches here in Uganda.
1, 2, 3. Fire! Take it in Jesus' name. Whoa!
When California-based pastor Benny Hinn visited the country, he sold out stadiums at $50 a ticket, more than the average monthly income for many Ugandans. Joyce Meyer's TV program repeats for hours at a time on Ugandan TV. And when pastor and author Rick Warren arrived in Uganda in 2008, locals celebrated the launch of his Purpose-Driven Living program. But recently, the growing relationship between American evangelicals and Uganda has taken a dark turn.
The gay movement is an evil institution that's goal is to defeat the marriage-based society.
This is Scott Lively, one of 3 American evangelicals who traveled to Uganda in the spring of 2009 to speak at a conference about how Africans can protect themselves from homosexuality.
The theme of this conference was the gay agenda, and the gay agenda was that there is a massive recruitment of school children into homosexuality, and any homosexual is actually following that agenda.
These are people that were molested themselves, and they're turning it around and they're looking for other people to be able to prey upon. And that when they see a child that's from a broken home, it's like they have a flashing neon sign over their head.
Lively is a missionary who has written several books against homosexuality, including The Pink Swastika, which, among other things, argues that homosexuals are the true inventors of Nazism.
Male homosexuality has historically been not adult to adult, it's been adult to teenager.
During the 3-day seminar, which drew thousands of Ugandans, including religious and government leaders, Lively and the other 2 Americans presented themselves as experts on topics such as how gay people can be made straight, how gays recruit children, and how gay men often sodomize teenage boys. Homosexuality was already illegal in Uganda, but 1 month after the conference, a relatively unknown member of the Ugandan parliament, David Bahati, introduced legislation that would dramatically increase penalties for homosexual acts. Why did you decide to write this bill?
I did that for the sake of protecting our children. Here in Uganda, we have a problem of people promoting homosexuality, especially using money and materials to recruit young people.
Bahati's bill calls for, among other things, life in prison for those who commit homosexual acts, and the death penalty for serial offenders. It would also make it mandatory for people to report known homosexuals within 24 hours or face imprisonment themselves. Many people say that the visit of 3 American evangelicals to Uganda back in March and the conference that was held here was the main catalyst for this bill.
Well, I think that is in a way a little bit insulting our country, that you're suggesting that Ugandans cannot think for themselves. So it is something very disturbing.
Like Bahati, Pastor Sempa bristles at the idea that Americans had anything to do with the creation of the anti-gay bill. In fact, he believes Ugandans deserve full credit.
I find it racist, the whole conversation that Americans came and told us to make this law. We really need to be credited that this is an African homegrown initiative. Every time an African does something good, they blame some white man for it. I think that is racist.
But what bothers Sempa more than accusations that American evangelicals influenced the bill is the fact that many are publicly distancing themselves from it.
Our own estimation of Americans on this issue, I think they're flaky. I think they're very wimpy. I think they can't stand when the fire begins to go off.
Sempa feels the greatest betrayal came from his former colleague Rick Warren, the pastor who delivered the invocation at President Obama's inauguration. After months of pressure to weigh in on the Ugandan bill, Warren released a video stating his strong opposition to it.
With a law that I had nothing to do with, I completely opposed and I vigorously condemned.
Sempa quickly issued his own response, denouncing his former friend.
Your lack of courage during this time has betrayed the fundamental need of what a pastor should be. Rick Warren comes here to Uganda and says, I support the Church of Uganda in its stand against homosexuality. And then he goes to America, he says, oh no, I never said anything about that. I really, no, man, you can't be a wimp. You can't say one thing amongst Christians, then you go and say another thing on the liberal media. No, we must be consistent.
The inconsistency that Sempa sees abroad only fuels his fire.
We do not want this sickness.
As he whips the nation of Uganda into a frenzy,
We don't want it.
gays and lesbians fear for their lives,
It's like death wishes.
while American Evangelical Scott Lively now watches from a distance.
Dr. Lively, do you condemn this anti-gay bill in Uganda?
In the Ugandan capital of Kampala, Pastor Martin Sempa is rallying support for an anti-homosexuality bill that has drawn the ire of the international community, including the very American evangelicals some believe inspired the legislation.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Pastor Dr. Martin Sempa. I'm here in the capacity as the chairman of the National Task Force Against Homosexuality in Uganda.
At the press conference, Pastor Sempa was flanked by religious leaders, both Christian and Muslim, a show of unity seldom seen in Uganda.
We are making legislation to make sure that sodomy and homosexuality never sees the light of legality in this land of the Pearl of Africa.
In a room packed with local and international media, the pastor began a presentation that grew increasingly inflammatory and graphic.
I've taken time to do a little research to know what homosexuals do in the privacy of their bedroom. One of the things they do is called anal leaking, where a man's anus is leaked like this by the other person, like ice cream. And then what happens, even poo-poo comes out. The other one poo-poo's out, and then they eat the poo-poo. The other one they do is they have a sex practice called fisting, where they insert their hand into the other man's hand, and it goes into the anus all the way. And it is so painful, they have to take drugs, but they enjoy it. Now, if we have any children, please step out. This is a parental guidance moment. That child can be moved out. So I've done research. This is what they do. Number one, you can see a man here having sucked the other person's rectum, and the other person is poo-pooing, and this one is eating the poo-poo all over the place. Tell me, when you have a law against homosexuality, do you say, except eating poo-poo? I mean, look at this guy sincerely. Bishop. Stagafulaizaha. Hajat. We do not want this sickness. This is sick, and it's therefore deviant. We do not want it.
A skilled and savvy showman, Sempa then summoned a young woman from the audience, one he claimed had been recruited into homosexuality.
So this is Sandra. She's a young girl who was recruited from school at the age of 16. After 3 years of living with older lesbians, she's out to tell her story. Just read your statement.
Members from Sexual Minorities Uganda brought to our school Interact Club.
The young woman recounted how she was lured with money and gifts into a homosexual lifestyle. The story struck a familiar and clearly effective chord. Sempa regularly paints a picture of opportunistic Westerners with deep pockets preying upon Africa's impressionable, poor youth.